All rise, veuillez vous lever.
We're in open session, and we'll render a ruling on the prosecutor's application. This is the third time that the prosecution is making or has made an application to have their witness declared a hostile witness. The first time was on the occasion of the testimony of witness 604. The second time was in relation to witness 495. On those previous occasions, the chamber considered that the extensive degree to which the testimonies of those witnesses had consistently and systematically diverged from the statements that the witnesses had given to the prosecution was enough to warrant having those witnesses declared hostile, and the applications of the prosecution were granted on those occasions. And similarly, the chamber grants the application of the prosecution in this instance for the same reason. We feel called upon to explain that the factor of consistent and systematic divergence between testimony and previous statement is not a factor that floats in the air. It is a factor that necessarily takes its bearing from the central question that the court must answer in the case. In a criminal case, that central question is a question of the criminal responsibility of the accused person. That concludes our ruling, and the witness will be called in to continue his testimony.
Mr. President, if I may, just very briefly. Just to clarify one thing, in response to Mr. Steinberg's submission at page 39, lines 1 to 5, this was in response to Mr. Hooper's submission, just wanted to point out that the summons decision he's referring to was issued on the 17th of April, and the conversation that Mr. Hooper was hinting at was taking place in March, between 14th and 17th. So I'm not sure, well, maybe he can clarify how these two are related. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honour, I was actually on the point of clarifying that. I'm grateful for my learned friend for pointing it out. In fact, well, this is the danger when one is confronted with facts on one's feet without time to prepare. Certainly we did contact all the witnesses who are due to be summoned and apprise them of the increased risk as a result of that summons situation. The situation with respect to this witness, there was an additional factor that preceded that, however, and inter partes I can do no more than refer Your Honours to filing number 1217 confidential ex parte, which dealt with a security issue, a serious security issue pertaining to another witness, which impacted also upon this witness. And it is in fact that which is being referred to in these conversations. Obviously, because of the sensitive nature, which Your Honours will immediately appreciate when time permits a review of the filing, we could not communicate that information with the witness, but it did, in our assessment, affect his security, it was a serious matter, and it required immediate attention.
The filing number 1217, is it material that is available to the defense?
Your Honours, it is an ex parte matter. It is subject of a continuing order of non-disclosure by the Chamber, which the Chamber is due to review again shortly. The date of the filing is the 13th of March 2014, although it refers to an incident that happened a few days before that.
All right, we'll leave the matter, Mr. Rupa.
Yes, I'm grateful to my friend for his clarification, and that the reason why what was being said was not as suggested. But of course,
Is there, before you, while you continue, is there no reason why the witness cannot be brought in? While,
No.
All right, Mr. Mai, please bring in the witness.
Yes, Mr. President.
it may be a matter of relevance for my questioning of this witness as to the background to what was said by the investigators to him. And Your Honour has the point. Thank you.
You will have to explore that in the course of questioning.
I'm just wondering whether the ex parte matter, in some form, redacted or otherwise, could be made known to the defence.
Mr. Steinberg, you've got the point of Mr. Hooper, I take it? This is a matter that now looks like will become a matter for inquiry as part of the questioning of this witness. And to the extent that, at 1217, yes, filing number 1217 may have a bearing on this. You need to review that material and see if there's no compelling reason to withhold it rather from the defense still.
Your Honours, we will look at that. Unfortunately, the difficulty of the prosecution is that circumstances have not changed since the last update. Therefore, the reasons that were placed before the Chamber still remain by and large valid. It is the subject of a Chamber's order, and any disclosure of this would have to be with the leave of the Chamber.
Let's continue. Witness, welcome back. We had to discuss some legal matters. Yes, and Mr. Steinberg will continue his questions to you. Mr. Steinberg.
Thank you, Your Honours. Thank you, Your Honours. Good morning, Mr. Witness.
Ijambo, Bwana President.
Are we getting interpretation?
Right. Mr. Witness, do you recall yesterday I had questioned you regarding the atmosphere in your area, or rather, shall we say, the attitude in your area of ODM supporters towards PNU supporters? Do you recall that?
Ndio nakumbuka.
And after several questions, I asked you whether you were able to tell us what was the reaction of the Kalenjin community in your area to the announcement of Mr. Kibaki as a presidential winner. And your answer was, I do not know. I'm referring, Your Honours, to transcript 142, pages 29 to 30, edited transcript. Do you maintain that you don't know what the attitude of the Kalenjins in your area was to the victory by Mr. Kibaki?
Ndivyo, kwa sababu nilisema kutoka hapo town hiyo kilomita 2 ama 3 ni watu mix, si wa Kalenjin peke yake. Sasa vile tulienda kwa polisi, si kujua huko nje ilikuwa namna gani, sababu tulikuwa under protection ya polisi post.
And as you sit here today, do you maintain that you still do not know what was the attitude of the Kalenjin community towards Kibaki being announced as a presidential witness?
Unaposema leo, nitasema attitude baadaye nilikuja kugundua kwamba tofauti ya siasa ilikuwa imetokea. So wale pia wa ODM wako furahia upande wa PNU kutangazwa kama rais, sababu waliona kama kura iliibwa.
And you also said, and I beg your pardon, it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before, also at page 30, when I asked you why did the Kikuyu in your area go to the IDP camp, leave Turbo and go to the refugee camp, you said I didn't understand why they went there. Do you still maintain you don't know why the Kikuyus went to the refugee camp?
Ndivyo.
Are you aware, Mr. Witness, of any animosity among the Kalenjin community towards the Kikuyu community at the time of the election and immediately after? Are you aware of that?
Ndivyo, kama niliposema awali, ilikuwa ni tofauti ya siasa. Hiyo ndio kitu nilikuja kugundua, sababu baada ya hiyo vita tena walikuja wakakaa pamoja, na sasa bado wanakaa pamoja.
And when I asked you if you knew, when you said people were running away, who was running away and who was chasing them in your area after the announcement of the results, do you still say you don't know who was running and who was chasing?
Msimamo wangu ni kwamba sijui.
See, I want to put to you, Mr. Witness, that you're not being entirely forthright with the court about these issues. I put to you that you could not fail to know that there was serious animosity between ODM and PNU members after the election results. Isn't that right?
Hiyo naweza sema hivi, kura hiyo ilipopikwa 2007 tukaenda 2008, hii vita ilipoanza si vita ya kwanza, ni vita ingine ilikuwa imeanza 1992 tukafuata hivyo hivyo hivyo. So wakati tunapopiga kura watu walikuwa wamezoea kwamba pengine kutatokea na vita. Sasa hiyo wasiwasi lazima ingekuwa sababu ya vita ambayo ilikuwa imetokea.
All right. Please focus on the question, Mr. Witness. I'm not asking about 2002. Is it not correct that you did in fact know that there was serious tension and animosity between ODM and PNU supporters in your area, both in the build-up to the election and immediately after the results? Isn't that true?
Mr. Witness, don't answer. Wait. Mr. Steinberg, can you reformulate that question in a more straight line manner?
Do you agree, Mr. Witness, that ODM supporters were enraged by the announcement of Mr. Kibaki as the presidential winner in your area?
Ndivyo.
And do you agree that that rage was directed towards PNU supporters in general and in particular towards the Kikuyu in the area?
Mimi sijui kama kulikuwa na kisirani. Ile kitu najua ni kwamba walipotangaza tu ndio inji ikaanza kuharibika kutoka saa hii. Si kujua nyuma pale kama kulikuwa na chochote ambaye walikuwa na chuki ama sababu haikuonekana. Watu ya ODM walikuwa wanafanya campaign kwa upande ya PNU. Mahali wale pia wa supporters wa PNU walikuwa aswa. Tunaposema PNU tunasema wale walikuwa mrengo tofauti na ODM. So mimi sikujua kama kulikuwa na tofauti, lakini tu mimi najua ni kwamba wakati walianza kutangaza matangazo ya hiyo votes ambaye walikuwa wamecast, hapo ndio nikajua inji ikaribikia kutoka saa hiyo. Sikujua pale nyuma. Nilijua tu siku hiyo wakati wanatangaza. Na wakatangaza Kibaki kuwa rais. Hapo ndio tofauti ikatokea.
I put it to you, sir, that you knew very well that the reason why the Kikuyu were fleeing to the IDP camp was because Kalenjin ODM supporters were launching attacks on them and on their houses, and burning houses, looting houses. Is that not correct?
Sivyo.
Your Honor, Honor, may we go into private session? I need to ask him some more personal questions.
Private session.
We are in open session, Mr. President.
All right. I'd like to return to the evidence you've given about the meeting, the 3-hour meeting that you had with persons 1 and 3 in Eldoret. And in particular, I'd like to explore exactly when this took place. Now, initially on 2 days ago, that would be Tuesday, I refer to transcript 142, page 49. You said that this happened in October 2012. You said, I don't remember the date, but I do know I was called 3 weeks later, or 3.5 weeks later. I asked you by whom, and you responded that it was the male investigator who called you. All right? You don't need to look at your statement, you just listen to what I'm telling you. Did you understand what I read to you?
You may have to start again when you refer, and this has happened occasionally in the past on both sides. Mid-question, you're referring to transcript. The witness might think you were speaking to them in that part when you are only trying to inform the chamber and parties on the other side where you're getting your reference from. But it can be confusing to witnesses. It may have when he was looking in his statement for that paragraph. I don't know, but let's take that question again.
Thank you, Your Honours. It's a valuable advice. Mr. Witness, just so you know, when I refer to the transcript, that's for the benefit of my colleagues from the defence and the victims and the chamber, so that they can check that what I'm putting to you is not incorrect or misleading. And if it is, they will stop me. But you don't need to read it yourself. Just listen to what I'm saying and what's being translated to you and try to understand that. Okay?
Ndivyo.
So I'll repeat it. We were speaking about the 3-hour meeting with persons 1 and 3. You said it happened in October 2012. You don't remember the date, but you said I was called 3 weeks later, 3 weeks later or 3.5 weeks later. You then confirmed that it was the male investigator who called you. Then, for the parties at page 50, you went on to say that, yes, I was called by an investigator after 3.5 weeks. He called me and we spoke for a long time. And later we sat down together and we had a discussion. Do you remember telling that to the court?
Unifafanile mzuri ile watu number 1 na number 3 ndio unasema ama my investigators?
Mr. Witness, I'm interested in the dates of your communications, firstly with persons 1 and 3 and with the investigators. So what I'm interested in is that you told the chamber that you met with persons 1 and 3, the 3-hour meeting, there's only been one that you've told us about, and that it was 3.5 weeks later that you were called by the investigator. Do you remember telling the chamber that?
Nakumbuka mzuri sana.
And you went on to say that you spoke to the investigator for a long time on the phone, presumably, and later we sat down together and had a discussion. Do you recall saying that?
Si kusema niliongea na investigator muda mrefu. Nilisema baada ya sisi kukutana na wale watu wawili, ule namba 1 na namba 3, katikati pale sikumbuki tarehe, nilipigiwa simu tena na investigator akitaka mimi niende kwa location hii namba 4.
And was that 3.5 weeks after the meeting you had with persons 1 and 3 that you received that phone call?
Baada ya kukutana na watu wawili na wakachukua jina langu na wakatuma, nikakaa karibu wiki moja, tuseme wiki moja, sikumbuki tarehe mzuri, lakini naona ni kama wiki moja, alafu wale ma investigators wakaanza kunipigia simu. Sasa tukapanga mwisho ya hiyo wiki 3.5 ndio mimi sasa nikaenda kwa location 4 kwenda kuangalia investigators.
And you see, this is what I'm trying to clarify, because now you're saying that it was after 3.5 weeks that you went to location 4. And in fact, later on in your evidence, you did state that the 3.5-week period that you were mentioning was the time between your meeting with accused, with witnesses, with persons 1 and 3, and your meeting in location 4 with the investigators. And what I'm trying to clear up is, was it 3.5 weeks between the meeting with persons 1 and 3 and your first phone call? Or was it 3.5 weeks between your meeting with persons 1 and 3 and your interview in location 4? I'll repeat that last part, which is what I'm interested in. Was it 3.5 weeks from your meeting with persons 1 and 3 to the phone call from the investigator? Or was it 3.5 weeks between your meeting and the interview at location 4?
wakati tulipoongea na huyu persons namba 1 na namba 3, nikamaliza wiki 3.5, ndipo tukakutana tena na wapelelezi katika location 4.
All right. And one thing you seem to be fairly certain about is this period, that it was a period of 3.5 weeks. You've repeated that several times. Are you confident that it was, in fact, 3.5 weeks between your meeting and the interview? Is that right?
Naona hivyo kwa sababu ndio nisema hivyo, ninafanya estimation ya mimi kukutana na hii watu na mimi kwenda location 4. Naona ni kama wiki 3.5, sababu haikufika mwezi moja.
All right. Well, I'm going to put it to you, Mr. Witness, that 3.5 weeks prior to your meeting with the investigators at location 4 on the 20th of November, it would have been impossible for you to be meeting with number 3 in Eldoret. Any comment before I proceed?
That sounds like an argument.
Your Honours, I intend to, perhaps I can ask to go into private session and I'll put it more directly.
Private session.